All right, welcome back to the program. Dr. Hassan Mahmud, Director Monetary Policy Department at the Central Bank of Nigeria, is joining me. Right here, we're looking at global shocks' impact on Nigeria's monetary policy. Dr. Mahmud, good to see you again. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning. At least in the last few weeks, we've been talking about monetary policy.
Yeah.
I don't know if we should define it. No, we shouldn't define it. Go on our YouTube channel and watch that show. Let's quickly just go to the issue of the day. I think it was this poet, John Donne, if I'm not mistaken, that said that no man is an island to itself.
Yeah.
How can you explain the complexity of local monetary policy, especially now in the case of Nigeria? Nigeria's monetary policy in the context of globalization, in the context of fragile and global capital inflows and outflows.
Thank you, and good morning again. I think the perception we will start from is the fact that Nigeria, as an economy, is regarded as a small, open economy. What that means is that, yes, the economy is an economy of about $500 billion. However, the economy has interface with other economies of the world, in the sense that you trade with other economies of the world, and that falls into the idiom you just mentioned. No country is an island. You know, you have to. There are things you cannot do yourself. You need others that have already done it, that already have the technology to use to do your own, and along the line you develop yourself. So country specializes in different things. So you need all to trade with those countries to get those things, either goods or services or technology or even people. So that interaction with other countries that have their own structure, have their own economy, have their own interest rate, exchange rate, and everything, will have implications for your own economy. And then the conglomerate of all those economies, which we call the global economy, the behavior and development in those sectors or in those environment will also impact on your economy, because they will adjust their policies in their own economy to suit the challenges they are having. And because you are dealing with them, then you will be seeing the impact of those challenges on, or those policy adjustments on your own economy. So you also need to take adjustment. So the global shocks are what we refer to. The things that are not caused by you, by the global, you are not a contributor to those development, but because those that were affected by those development will have to take policy decisions to address those developments in their own economy, it will, by extension, contagiously come to impact on you. And you also in your own economy will have to also be adjusted. So you see the global economy responding to different shocks and that's why there's always the need for coordination for policy response. So issues around globalization, as let us come together, we have common challenges, let us see how we can effectively address those challenges in our domestic economy without necessarily impacting negatively on the generality of the economies of the world. So global shocks come from, it could be climatic, it could be financial system collapse like we had in 2007, it could be COVID, it could be Ebola, different kind of shocks, that will come, and then maybe those economies will stop certain things. Maybe they will stop production, or they don't allow flights to come into their country, or they change their exchange rate or inflation, interest rate regime. If your banks or your financial institutions have exposures to them, those new high interest rate that if imposed will affect them, or they will even stop your businesses from operating there.
Okay. It's quite interesting that you said that Nigeria is a small open economy.
Yeah.
And what came to my mind is that how acute is it really now for policymakers with small open economies, as you have said, like Nigeria, in terms of the limitation of monetary policy to achieve the desired goals, or to, influence domestic financial conditions. So perhaps the monetary policy, the CBN, that is in charge of monetary policy, is having limitations.
Now it's even more challenging. Substantially, I can comfortably say that the last maybe close to half a decade, or if not a decade, policy initiatives in most of our economies, including Nigeria, is largely in response to global shocks or global developments. So there are less of, even the last monetary policy meeting that I held, you will see that the governor will have read a lot about what is going on in the global economy. COVID came up, Russia, Ukraine came up, oil prices build up came up. We are not contributors to those developments. But the decisions that MPC members took in terms of adjusting rate, in terms of creating other avenues for foreign capital inflows, in terms of looking inward so that we shield ourselves more from these shocks, were largely to address those shocks. That's what we call headwinds, and that comes to hit you from different parts of the world.
Lose your balance.
Yes, so you lose your balance. So you need to put your feet on the ground and stabilize. And the only way you can stabilize quickly is that when you have some very good shock absorbers internally, domestically, to absorb it. And that's why, the emphasis is always now, look inwards, make sure that your policy measures that you adopt are growing your domestic economy, so that even though you are competitive, you will still find that you are still resilient. Your level of resilience also tells you the strength of your economy. We've seen economies that are in war and they are still surviving. You see what's going on in Russia. The country is in war, but it's still making $1 billion daily. It's because they've done a lot of things domestically to shield the economy such that even in crisis, they're able to move on. Some economies with the smallest of shocks collapse to zero, and you start seeing everything, degenerating to a level where you see people losing their jobs, businesses closing, and GDP going negative, and all the indicators going, northwards.
So the question now is that, do you think that Nigeria's monetary policy, which is conducted by the CBN, has been resilient enough? Because if you take a look at even the responses of monetary policy in the last 2 years, let's say since the pandemic, you see there was a time, interest rates was held unchanged for a very long time until we started seeing the spike in inflation. You had to realign aggressive interest rates. You were into economic expansion. The MPC was telling CBN, continue the economic expansion interventions and all of that. Do you think that has been able to solve the problem of the global shocks that we've been having, really, realistically? Yeah,
the best example I'll give now is the COVID, because that was before the Russia-Ukraine crisis. The best example would be COVID. And what happened during COVID? We saw global economies closing. We call them shutdown. There were restrictions, no movement, no flights, no ship,
everybody was at home.
Yes. Before then, there was a collapse in oil prices. So nothing was coming in. We had ships on the sea that nobody is ready to take, and we're paying for those ships just to be staying there idle, and people were just cutting down their prices, half price, to just get it off, to take the cost off. But what happened? And what they say something is the mother of necessity, or whatever.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yes. So central bank and other institutions, fiscal, monetary, all came up with innovative measures to address this unexpected, development. And that's why you see central bank or monetary authorities now, or monetary policy, using other tools, to supplement monetary policy. Because some of these, COVID now is close to 2 years, it's not something that was addressed within 3 months. So you have to start using other unconventional monetary policy tool to address the shock in your economy. Don't forget that the responses you are doing is to, keep your economy going. Yes, you are responding to shock from outside, but it's for your own economy to keep going. People retain their jobs, businesses are functioning, people's standard of living is not eroded completely. So during that period, a lot of policy measures were taken, conventional and unconventional, to address that shock. And if those policy measures were not taken, particularly those that targeted households, farms, vulnerable groups, SMEs, healthcare, if those measures were not taken, the impact of that shock on the economy will have been enormous. And we'll see it in other economies that are the likes of Nigeria, how that some economies are still in recession now. They have still not pulled out. Nigeria has gone to a level of over 3% in GDP growth, getting to 4%. Just within the, so that time the argument in the literature was that it's going to be a V-shape. Some were actually they stayed there for longer before they started coming out. Some are still just off the shores of the shock. So it all depends on how innovative, how very quick. And the other thing I will add is that in most cases now, because we've come to realize that shocks are a permanent phenomenon. They will always come. Crisis will always evolve. So it's not like you sit down before, crisis period episodes are like 10, 15 years apart. Now you see them like almost every 2 years. When one come, Ebola came, left, COVID came, Russia is coming, So economists are preparing for those shocks. So you have to be proactive. You have to have your resilience sectors well buffered, such that even if those shock comes, if it lasts 2, 3 years, you are still able to stand, going on. So as well as doing proactive measures, you are also doing measures to shield you from those shocks.
Okay, the question is now, the policy responses that the monetary policy has taken, have you seen it effective? And did it also come at a timely, did it come timely? That's one. The second part of the question is that we've seen an aggressive monetary policy, at least in the last 2 MPC meetings. Do you think that it will reduce the effect of global shocks? Or how have you guys over there been looking at the chart and the table? Has it been able to reduce the impact of global shocks? 3, sorry that I'm bombarding you because I'm also looking at our time, so you use like 3 minutes to answer the 3 questions. The third one, really it's about, this capital inflows into the country. We've seen NPR at 14% now, the US hiking rates, global economies hiking rates to tame inflation. What has been the impact in terms of inflows into Nigeria?
Okay, I'll look at it from 3 sides, just the way you asked the 3 questions. The first one, has the policy measures been able to address some of the shocks? Yes, I can say that yes, it has been able to address some of the shocks, and it has also helped the economy to still remain stable. We had negative GDP just for 2 quarters, and then by the 3rd quarter, we're out of it. So even within 2020, by the end of 2020, we're out of the crisis. Many of the economies went into 2022 or late 2021. And what happened within those periods? Because measures were taken to address the real sector of the economy, because that was the sector that was really impacted. And you see that then central bank or monetary policy focus was on reviving and sustaining output growth so that jobs and businesses are retained. And that dovetailed into Russia-Ukraine crisis, because if we had not had the pickup in agriculture, in manufacturing, due to the various interventions that went in both fiscal and monetary into the system, if we had not had the pickup in capacity utilization and production level to when the Russia-Ukraine crisis came, and you see cereal prices of cereals and wheat and all the products skyrocketing, input for fertilizer also skyrocketing, will have been in a more severe situation now. Food crisis was eminent in most of the economies, but you still see that the interventions have substantially helped. Inflation, food inflation was one factor that was really pushing up, the headline inflation within the economy. But because of those real sector intervention and the output that came into that space, you see that cushioning substantially. And you see, yes, food inflation was growing, but the speed at which it was growing was a lot moderated. And we see that we have not effectively entered into a food crisis yet, even though it is coming. On the FX side, yes, where you sustain it, because of the first crisis, the COVID one, you saw businesses stopped in the US or all other advanced economies. So you see inflows that were coming through remittances or even financial credit inflows to our banking system, all froze. If we had not had the cushion that we had, don't forget that even throughout this period, we still have our reserve hovering around 40 billion. Some countries' reserves were 75% eroded. They had to collect loans from different places to, beef up the reserve. But by the beginning of 2021, we're already seeing a 15% increase in foreign remittances inflows. Our records showed that because incentives were created. We had the Naira for dollar, we have other initiatives.
200.
Yes, the 200 has not even started then, yeah, but we have the Naira for dollar, other incentives. Yes, so those things help to sustain the inflows. And we see, records showing that even by 2021, inflows to Nigeria improve in terms of remittances and that. Even the I&E window, after the shock, when placements there were just less than 10, 20 million, you start seeing growing over 200 million and then growing over to 300-400 million on weekly basis. So those helped cushion the effect, and that shows the level of resilience your economy is to those shocks.
Okay. I'm having a feeling that we'll continue this discussion. On those global headwinds. Yes, I'm having a feeling now because of some of the things you said. But many thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
This morning. All right, I've been speaking with Dr. Hassan Mahmud, who is the Director of Monetary Policy Department at the Central Bank of Nigeria. We've been looking at monetary policy amid global headwinds or global shocks. That's the show today. Thank you all for being a part of the program. Today, be the best you can be and be that change that you want to see. I am Nancy Najib. Bye now.